Learn a dip in your hip, a glide in your stride. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe, with shows throughout the week. Everything you want, everything you could need. From the paranormal to the supernatural, from the spiritual to the unknown, from emotions to comedy. You can find us at Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and so much more. This is Rift Nation Network, the RNN. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
Hey guys, welcome back to Mystic Mayhem, another first Tuesday of the month. Tonight's guest was originally going to be John. He had a case, an emergency case he had to get to. That was a little pressing, very urgent. So we're going to reschedule him for another day, but we have an amazing guest on tonight. His name is Dennis Eslock. I'm sure many of you have heard of him. We're going to bring him on. Gosh, there's so much to say about him. So obviously an investigator, 25 years experience, and then a medium remote viewer, which I would love to talk about some of the remote viewing, and general contractor. He does curating at the Cabin on 360, which is a place that I've always wanted to go visit. So we definitely have to hit on that because I do want to know more history behind that. I had a guest recently that talked about it, kind of touched on it, as well as a building, I guess, adjacent to it, but I definitely want to dive into that. So let's bring him on without further ado. Dennis, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. Let's get you in here on the screen. Where to start? I want to know about the cabin first.
Sure.
Well, actually, for those that don't know you, though, maybe a little bit about yourself.
So, like, you pretty much already spelled it out there. Medium remote viewer, plenty of verification on both of those. Validation on virtually everything I've viewed so far, which is interesting. Been some really cool experiences doing remote views. 25 plus years investigating. I mean, if we want to get to it, technically I'm pushing probably 40 years, because the first time that I ever set a voice recorder, or well, at that time we called it a ghetto blaster, the big stereo that you carried on your shoulder, set that out in the cemetery. I was like 10, 12 years old. My cousins, I've got two cousins that were right in my age range within a year or two. And we had heard somewhere, if you put a tape recorder out in the cemetery, you can hear the voices of the dead. And we're like, that'd be cool. Let's go do it. And so we did. We carried my big ghetto blaster out in the cemetery at night. We captured somebody singing or whistling a tune, and their dad was a musician. And we played it for him and asked him, do you recognize this? And it was a song from the 40s. And this was in like the early 80s when we did this. So,
well, since I was 2 then, I can't, because I'll never tell my age.
Bus, Dennis.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean,
how old were you then? I don't have a given age, but
I was somewhere around 10, 12 years old. So, I mean, I was born in 69. So this was somewhere in the early 80s. So I graduated 87. This was probably a good 6 or 8 years earlier. So somewhere early 80s, maybe even late 70s. But, to us, it was fascinating. We're out in the middle of the cemetery. We're sitting a couple of 100 feet away from my ghetto blaster, and we can hear on the recording somebody whistling a tune, but we didn't hear it sitting out there.
Now, was this your first experience ever, or had you had prior experiences? Because that's a young age to start doing that.
I had a prior experience. So when I was 7, my granddaddy passed away. And I had a brother that was 4 years older than me that slept bottom bunk, and I slept top bunk. I woke up at some point, and my granddaddy was about 6'2", And he's looking me eye to eye at the top bunk, telling me goodbye. He loved me and he'd see me later. And I remember asking him, well, when did you guys come up? Because they lived a couple hours away. And he just wasn't there anymore. Okay, well, that was weird. So I rolled over. I'm thinking I'll see him in the morning when I get up. He and grandmother had driven a couple hours to come see us. At some point later on, mom came in, turned on the bedroom light, told my brother and I, get your asses up, we got to go. And of course, I'm 7. I'm confused. I'm like, is this because granddaddy went away? Where did he go? When did they even come up? I didn't know they were coming. And she asked me what the hell I was talking about. I said, well, he was here a little while ago and woke me up, told me goodbye and he loved me, but he'd see me later. You just need to get your ass out of bed. Granddad had a heart attack a couple of hours earlier. So that was my first experience, actually interacting with spirit. And then when I was 16, my brother chose to take his own life. He was 20 years old. I was on my way to the corner market. And anybody that has siblings knows that energy. They try to sneak up on you. You just know it. You know their energy is right behind you. Hey, Keith. So in walking to the corner market to get a pack of cigarettes, I hear my brother's voice distinctly behind me. He says, goodbye, I love you, and I'll always have your back. I'm looking all around. I don't see him. I thought he had walked up on me. What the hell? That was weird. Well, 9 o'clock that night, the police knocked on the door to let us know that his body had been discovered hanging from a tree on the other side of town. It was right at noon when I had my experience that I thought he had snuck up on me, but the coroner's report and his autopsy put time of death between 11 and 1. So right about the time that I had my experience, he had taken his own life, which, that kind of put me on the path of, is there a time frame? Can they interact with us? What happens when this meat suit dies? What can I look forward to? So it's been, a downhill financial slide ever since, buying every piece of equipment I can think of and trying this method and that method, all the way back to sprinkling flour on an attic floor just to see if you can capture the footprints. So it's been an interesting ride. I've investigated some of the coolest locations around. Of course, like you mentioned, now I'm a docent caretaker at the cabin on 360, which I'm not. I don't want to just blow our own horn, but it's probably one of the most active locations I've ever been. I rate it honestly right up there with St. Albans Sanatorium. It just never fails to produce something. We've never had a team leave and go, there was just nothing. We've had them say it's been quiet, and that they didn't get much, but they've always gotten something. So, and it varies, like any location, it varies. The cool thing about the cabin is we've got 3 different areas. We've got the log cabin itself, built in 1979, 1980. We've got the brick rancher next door that we don't know a build date on it. And then we've got 7 acres total. The majority is woods. And it's all battlefield from the Civil War, battles of Bethesda Church. So if one area is dead this week or tonight, and you're there tomorrow night, another area may be just wide open. And it's always changing. It's such a fluid location in what it presents. It's one of the coolest places.
Yeah. There was a battlefield that I investigated some time back with another group. And it wasn't my audio, it was actually theirs, but they actually had a cannon going off. I'm sure you probably get that kind of residual. It's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
I was it's like, man, that is an awesome piece of evidence to have.
Yeah, and we've had just tons and tons of personal experiences where we're leaving and we don't have any gear set up any longer. I see Howie has joined us. Greetings, brother. He's heard the drum and fife corps out there. We've heard it several times. At 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, there's not a damn high school band practicing drum and fife. We've heard, you know, residual musket fire, residual cannon fire. We do a lot of charity events at the cabin. We try to do one every other month, and it varies. Like this Saturday, we've got one for a young lady that is battling breast cancer. We've done toy drives every year for Toys for Tots. And one of our first ones, we had the end of the night, and I think we had five of my team standing on the front porch, which my team is Commonwealth Researchers of the Paranormal, or CROP. And we're standing on the front porch. Well, two of them are equestrians. They have horse farms, and they know the sound of a horse-drawn carriage. Well, right beside our property is a gravel drive that goes to the very back end of our property and the neighbor's property to our west. And there are cell towers back there. Well, we heard a horse and carriage going down that side road. That was loud enough and distinct enough that in the midst of the five of us talking about how our night had been and the investigation had gone, we all went dead silent, and three of them run off the porch to go see what the hell we just been.
Yeah. So you
and
grab
there's nothing there.
some recorders and run.
Right. It's one of those where you're like, did we really just hear that? Well, then we discover, so we've got two trusted friends that we permit to relic hunt the property. And they had found one complete horseshoe and I think it was two portions of horseshoes, and what appears to be a small brick foundation about 200 feet behind the log cabin. So we're thinking at this point, maybe there was a farrier's building back there, but we don't have any evidence of it. We can't find anything. I've looked at an 1864 Confederate engineer's map, and it shows a home on that piece of land, but it doesn't show an outbuilding or a farrier structure. Nothing else is marked in on that map. So we don't know if there was one there or not.
And back then, how strict and rigid are the laws? Do they really even have to put it on there? Could they just toss something up and nobody would even know?
Well, typically the maps that the Confederate engineers would use, that would be almost all inclusive, because they would want their forces to know, hey, there's a building here, you can go get this supply or that supply.
Oh.
So they were usually pretty all inclusive in their markings on the buildings, because they were drawing from information and notes from forward scouts that are going ahead of the main fighting force. And we sit 3.1 miles away from Cold Harbor Battlefield, which is notoriously per capita the deadliest battle of the Civil War. It exceeded an 80% death rate. It has the distinction of being nicknamed Grant's Folly. After the war, Grant was asked, what's your biggest regret of the entire war? What was the one thing that you regret most? And he refers to Cold Harbor, something along the lines of the tenacity and the veracity that the Confederate soldiers showed at Cold Harbor was something that I'll never forgive myself for, because his forces were decimated. Between 7,000 and 12,000 men lay dead or wounded on the battlefield in the first 90 minutes.
And that's just miles from you.
3 miles. And then its neighboring battlefield, which is 3.4 miles, is Gaines Mill, and it had a horrific death count as well. So we had, some of the largest forces moving through our area on their way to this major battle. We're situated in Mechanicsville, Virginia, right outside Richmond. So we were sitting on the outer fortifications to protect Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy. So they were told under all circumstances, defend these lines. So they fought with a lot of vigor, to say the least. And that in itself has to leave a lot of energy on the land. But within a mile and a half or so, I can account for 2,264 men that were killed, captured, wounded, or missing in action. That's a huge number.
Yeah. But then these 2,000 men are separate than these other counts.
Yeah, they are separate from Cold Harbor. Well, since we are situated on the battlefield for the battles of Bethesda Church, a tenth of a mile or less from our front porch are the remnants of the foundation for Bethesda Church. The Union referred to it as the Old Church, but it was a Confederate headquarters. And then a mile and a half to our northwest was the Via House, and that was the Union headquarters. So our little plot of land is virtually dead center between these two, Union and Confederate headquarters. And we sit 0.2 of a mile from modern day Route 360 and Walnut Grove Road. And the Confederates were told at all cost maintain this crossroad. It's a main thoroughfare into Richmond for troops and supply movements. So they had encamped this whole area as much as they could. But between May 28 and June 3rd, 1864, there was so much troop movement and so much occupation of that land that historians have said if we had a map for every time that troops transitioned on that land, we'd have a map every 2 hours. So it saw a ton of activity, both good, in the neighbors bringing food to the soldiers, and bad being all the fighting that took place there.
Yeah. Now, what about the property itself, like the not war related, but were there other deaths on property?
Sadly, yes. So the log cabin, like I said, was built in 79 into 1980. So Ryan's grandfather actually purchased the land July of 1978. Built this log cabin to be a model home for log cabin sales in the area. The first document that we find is an open house advertisement for it flyer in 1980. Now the little brick rancher that is next door, I don't know when it was built, because in the land plat that was drawn up in 1978 when Ryan's grandfather bought the property, that house isn't on it. But in May of 1979, there's a new survey entered into court records that has that structure drawn on, and then it's footnoted to say, just to show location of structure, and it's the little brick rancher. But we do know that on October 4th, 1979, the Elliott family were tenants in the home. You have Mr. and Mrs. Elliott, their son, Randy Lynn, who was 17 at the time, and their daughter, Melissa Carol Elliott, who was 12 at the time. So on the morning of October 4th, 1979, between 7:30 a.m. when Mom and Dad left for work and 10:30 a.m. when Randy was seen carrying something into the woods, he had raped and murdered her with 2 .38 caliber rounds in her chest. He then threw her body out her bedroom window, carried her 75 to 100 yards into the woods, and deposited her quote unquote partially clothed body into a refrigerator box that was back into the woods. We're assuming there was a trash pile back there.
Was Randy the boy or the?
Randy was the male. Okay. So Randy was adopted in 1972 by Mr. Elliott. We don't know race on any of them but Randy, and we know him to be a black male. Melissa's autopsy shows her to be Caucasian female, 12 years old. So we don't know Mom and Dad's race. I don't know the dynamic between Randy and Mr. Elliott. So, that's something I can't speak to, but I can speak to the fact that her autopsy report shows her as a Caucasian female, and his arrest record shows him to be a black male.
And so he was found guilty, or what was the results of that?
So after he was seen dropping her body in the refrigerator box and running off through the woods, obviously police were notified when the construction workers found her body. Police cordoned off the area and they put out a manhunt for this black male that was seen running from the area. They didn't know at the time that it was her stepbrother. But a mile and a half away, a man matching his description, mile and a quarter or so, was seen jumping fences in backyards, and then a vehicle was stolen from that neighborhood. So they put out an APB on the East Coast for Randy Lynn Elliott. He was found like 3 days later in Lumberton, North Carolina, going to grandma's house is what we understand. He was held in North Carolina. Investigators from Hanover County Sheriff Department went down and interviewed him, transporting him back here to face the charge of the murder, whatever other charges they were going to levy against him. He didn't fight extradition. They were seeking the death penalty, and he entered a plea agreement for life in prison without the possibility of parole in exchange for the death sentence. He was paroled May of 2019. And last we know, he's back in Lumberton.
Happened, right? I mean, you said he was 17?
He was 17.
And he was...
He's about 58, 59 now.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, how old he would be now. Goodness, he still has quite a life ahead of him out on parole.
Potentially. Now, I don't know if he's still monitored. He is listed on the, what do they call it, the sexual offenders list or whatever, so you can still find his mugshot online fairly easily. Now, if you want to go back and look at news reports on that date and the preceding days, like where he and 3 other juveniles escaped from Central State Asylum, you can find those by getting a newspapers.com membership and looking in the archive section.
So this guy, he was put in a psych facility, basically, at some point. Was it, this was like up to the hearing? Was he like trying to claim he was crazy or what?
That part I don't know. All I know is he was admitted to Central State Asylum, which is just in Petersburg. He and 3 other juveniles snuck out with the laundry truck. And they were, 2 of them, well, for lack of better definition, 2 of them went west. He and another went east. The 2 that went west turned themselves in the next day, and he and his cohort that ran the other way turned themselves in 2 days later.
Wow, that's a pretty extensive story. It just gets deeper and deeper. You just keep talking a little bit more.
There's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. We actually did have one of our followers that reached out to Randy and spoke with him on the phone. Now, I have no validation on it. I can't prove whether or not this is the actual words, but what I was told was Randy admits to, quote unquote, yes, I'm a guilty man. I stand here as a guilty man, but I wasn't there that day. And that effing house should have been burned down years ago. Now, leading up to this incident, one of Melissa's classmates who has come out and hung out with us at the cabin many times tells us that Randy had been spending a large amount of his time leading up to that in the basement, and would get angry when Mom would even call him upstairs for dinner. He just did not want to come out of the basement. He had kind of turned it into his hiding place, so to speak. So it begs to question, we know there's something dark in the basement. We know there's an entity down there. We refer to him lovingly as Dobby, the house elf.
I was going to ask about that. Like, what have y'all experienced in that basement or in the whole home altogether?
A lot of things. A lot of things. Howie can vouch there's definitely a darker entity in that basement. As to what it is, we don't know. I believe it's an elemental. Somebody else referred to it as a jinn. We've had it referred to as demonic, but I don't know what it is. I can't get it to give me its ID, so I can't prove what it is. But it plays mind games. I've had investigators run out of the place because they just all of a sudden feel like they're super angry and they want to hurt people, including family. Other investigators that just for no apparent purpose get angry. We've had growls, we've had shadow figures down there, we've had responses on EVPs where, can you tell us your name? It responds with Satan, Beelzebub, the Dark One, just all kinds of off the wall things. So I don't know what the hell it is, but I find it kind of hard to believe in my mind, having done this for so many years, that in this little unassuming brick rancher in the middle of Sticksville and hiding in a basement is a demon.
Right.
Why would it be somewhere where it doesn't get a lot of, for better terms, prey?
Yeah.
You know, I would expect it to be somewhere that it would have more prey. Yeah, and you know, Howie's throwing things in the chat.
Yeah.
He's beating me to it.
Awesome.
There's so many things that I've got an EVP where I was standing in Melissa's bedroom with one of our public groups, and I've got about 8 people sitting on the floor around me. I'm leaned up against her windowsill holding a voice recorder, and I said, Melissa, are you here with us, sweetheart? And plain as day, there is a young female voice on my recorder that says, I'm with you. I listened to that about 3 times, put the recorder down in the window, told my group I'll be back, and I went outside and bawled. One thing that anybody that has done this for so long understands is you develop a connection to spirits that you interact with often. And to interact with a young lady that's only 12 years old that had a horrific ending to her short, brief life, you develop a kind of older brother protective feeling for that entity. And I think that's where I'm at now with Melissa. So as soon as I heard that voice come back, that was a kick in the guts. So I just put the recorder down, went outside and cried for a minute. No problem at all, Howie. Hell, you can beat me to it. It is what it is. We're going to share them anyway. But yeah, like he said, we've had music out of nowhere, whistles, dancing as well. One of the young ladies that joined us, that she was supposed to spend that Friday night that Melissa was murdered, this young lady was supposed to spend that night at Melissa's house doing a sleepover. And she was hanging out with us out there one night, and we're investigating, and we hear singing. And this young lady just lost it. She broke down. And I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, that is Melissa. That girl loved to sing. I know that is her. I mean, you can't refute that her spirit is still there. And if we look at some of the theories in the field, you know, well, why is spirit all around us? Why is spirit still here? One of them is if they were taken out so tragically that the body and the spirit are ripped apart so quickly in a violent manner that the spirit doesn't understand that the body is dead. So they're still here. You know, and then of course you've got the theory of unfinished business. You've got, you know, any one of a dozen things. But I think this young lady is with us simply because she is scared, doesn't know where the hell to go. Let's take for assumption her mom and dad are still living, which we know her mom is. She doesn't want to go. Why go to that side if you're going to be alone? You don't know what the hell to look forward to. You don't know what's there. So I think if her parents were to pass, she would be able to go.
Have you heard from either of her parents since this?
So we have not. The gentleman that said he called and spoke with Randy spoke with her mom briefly, and then she broke down and gave the phone back to Randy. But I have not spoken with mom. I've debated numerous times reaching out to her. And then at the same time, I'm like, that's just tacky. I would not want to have somebody, if I had a child that was murdered, I would not want somebody calling me out of the blue going, hey, you want to talk to me about your kid? It would be a very short, curt fuck off.
Yeah. Unless I mean, yeah. But I think about the guy that created the K2 or the millimeter, you know.
Right.
So I
Gary
guess everybody
Galko.
grieves differently. You don't, but that's kind of different, you know.
Yeah. You know, when Gary Galka created the millimeter and named it after his daughter, Melissa, he wanted a way that he could talk to her. That, and I get that. But at the same time, I don't want that role of being the one that threw her under the bus like that and brought all those memories crashing back for her. I'm going to envision that this woman is probably 70, 75, because Melissa's 2 years older than me. She was born in 67. I'm born in 69. So that puts Melissa current day at 56. So Randy's even older than that. He's 61. And I'm going to guess that, you know, if mom had a child even at a young age at 15, that puts mom right at the 70, 75-year-old mark. As a 75-year-old, I don't think it would be nice at all to throw this back up to her at the, you know, waning end of life, so to speak.
Right.
So I won't be the one to reach out to her. If others want to, that's on them. I don't condemn it, but at the same time, I can't say is that I condone it.
Do you ever get experiences in that building that's adjacent? Is it the brick one?
That is the brick rancher where Melissa was at.
That with the basement?
With the basement, yes. Now the log cabin does not have a basement, but it does have, I think at this point, we think we've got like 3 entities that are resident in the log cabin. And I think there are 3 or 4 resident entities in the brick rancher. And I think at the same time, we've got a lot of passerby, so to speak, a lot of just travelers that are kind of drawn to it, I think, because of the other spirits that are resident. So it's an active location. And so it's so bizarre.
How do they find you to investigate that location?
Just do a Facebook search for the Cabin on 360. Send us a message. Have an idea of a time frame in mind that you want to book it. We don't have online scheduling or anything, but send us a message. Go, hey, I'm looking at, you know, a weekend in August or whatever. I'll match up to the calendar and we'll set you up. We've probably got some of the cheapest rates around as far as I know. Sunday night through Friday night, we're only $300. Saturday night's $350. That's from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. up to 8 people, $50 a person beyond 8, maximum 12 people.
So it gives you enough to have enough people there if you want, but not too much. You know, you don't want more than a dozen.
Right.
And you said this is in Mechanicsville.
Mechanicsville. Yeah, Mechanicsville, right outside Richmond, Virginia.
Mechanic.
Right.
And then your remote viewing, are you doing that just kind of for you and your experiences? Or are you doing that for a group or?
I guess for lack of better terms, freelance. Yeah. Howie, don't chuckle at her. She's having a hard time speaking.
Hey, I'll blame it on the Texas. It's Texas.
Yeah. So Howie can vouch for my remote viewing. Belle Meade was it Belle Meade? No. What the hell was the name of it, Howie? Put it in the chat for me, bro. I can't remember the name. Belnemus Plantation. So they reached out to me, and this is when Howie had pretty much first started All Seeing Paranormal Society. They reached out to me and said, hey, what do you get on this place? And I started calling off all this shit about the location and what spirits were there and what the location looked like. And they're like, dude, you got to come join us. All right, cool. So one of the things that I called out was when you're looking at the front of the plantation home, right on the side at the front corner, I see like the old cellar doors, you know, the kind of bifold lift open doors.
Yeah.
And they're like, nope, that's not there. You're wrong.
You're like, go
And I'm
back
like,
to the floor plan or
well, it's got a big horseshoe driveway. And they're like, no, it doesn't. Then they find an old photograph, and sure as shit, those things are there. Now, I also told them about, so for that remote view, I had, and it was kind of cool because I had like my own personal tour guide. Washington, rather tall black gentleman, met me as I presented at the location and kind of gave me the guided tour of the location. But then we got to the basement. When we walked in those steps, like the cellar steps, I know I'm at the summer kitchen. I see the mammy, the cook, but he turned and looked at me and had a look of trepidation on his face and then just bolted. Like he was in trouble or he was scared of something, like I shouldn't be there. But I told them I get Washington, that this was the man that led me around. Well, they had investigated it previously. And in the basement area where this was at, they picked up the name Washington. They had interacted with a person or a spirit named Washington down there. We found the foundation of the summer location in Washington's cabin as well. So, but it was really cool. That was one of the first times I think that was the first time that I had done a remote where Howie was involved.
if you listen to the name of it, he's got Belnemis.
Belnemis.
Not Belnemis. And
Yeah.
so is that Washington's cabin? Is it the same or?
No, Belnemis was the plantation home. That was the big house.
Okay.
Now Washington's cabin sat off of the main grounds because, like, it sat back to, if I remember right, I know the smokehouse was on the right-hand side. The ice house was back diagonal behind the house. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Howie, but I think the cabin was behind the home. Yeah, it was behind the home. Like, I don't remember if it was straight back, but I do know that the smokehouse was on the right and the ice house was, okay, well, there you go.
He's got
You're right of
instructions
the ice
going
house.
for you there. He's got
Yeah,
the cabin behind the
yeah.
home to the right of the ice house.
Yeah, and I've done so many. I do remember now the foundation that we found at the back 1 o'clock position behind the house, Howie, you're right. The back corner behind the smokehouse. So, but that was the first time that Howie dealt with me doing remote view. I interacted with a little girl upstairs. I told him where they were going to interact with her. I don't remember who all I interacted with. I know the cook in the basement, Washington, the little girl that was upstairs, and I don't remember what else there was. But it was a fantastic opportunity to meet some fairly cool people, other than Howie, I think.
Yeah, other than Howie. Now, have you thought about doing any like cases? Have you been approached for any yet? I'm sure you'd probably be open to it, being an investigator.
Yeah, I mean, I've had other teams reach out to me. John Harris from RVA Paranormal reached out to me one time and he said, "Hey, man, we're headed out to do an investigation." And I started describing exactly what he was going to encounter. And he called me back and he's like, "I don't know how the fuck you just did all that, but you have got me absolutely floored. Everything that you pinpointed, we encountered. The houses that you said we were going to pass on the way there, the house that you described we were going to, you were point on." He goes, "But you did give us some good things to look forward to and look out for." And that's kind of my purpose in doing it, is help investigators know what, where, and who to interact with if I can help them. And if it helps their investigation, fantastic. Ryan, years ago, well, I don't know who that is. It just shows up as Facebook user and has Dennis. Hola. Hola, Facebook user.
At one point, Katrina was listed as Facebook user. Do you know Katrina Cooper? I don't know if that's her now, but hers was doing that.
Oh, okay.
I
But we had Ryan had a guest. Oh, Courtney.
don't
But Ryan had a guest. This has been, God, I don't know, 6, 8 years ago. They were out in some Midwestern state, and she called him up because of his show and goes, "Hey, listen, my friend has activity and she's kind of worried about her house and blah, blah, blah. Do you know of any way to help?" Well, Ryan's like, I didn't know anybody out there. So he told her that, I've got a friend that may be able to help. So he reached out to me and I told him, well, yeah, man, we'll get together on Saturday. We'll sit around the fire pit, have a couple of beers, and we'll call her up and I'll see if I can do a remote. So this woman that has the activity, turns out that she is somehow or another tied into Hollywood and television. I have no clue who she was. But I literally gave her a walking tour of her house, described to her the entity that was there, turned out to be her father, where he was encountered with most, called out that her son was on the spectrum, just all kinds of things. I even told her that I get that your house is somewhere around 5,000 square feet. This is a big, beautiful home. Well, when that call ended, Ryan didn't hear anything for like 2 months. And then the first woman called Ryan and goes, "How the hell did your friend know so much about my friend's house? Because she is absolutely freaked out." I'm like,
Were you stalking her? No. I
"It's
know,
just
but
what
that's
I
a good
do."
way to use it though for people that are at a distance that want investigation or whatever, and you can't physically get there. Because how many times do you get cases in the state, but it's just a little far? You're working,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. And it doesn't always work. There are times where I just can't tune into a location.
Yeah.
There are times that, no medium can get a response from the particular loved one that you want. They just don't interact. So, and one of the weird things about it, I've found that there are times I will see a reverse image of it. Like if you're looking at a blueprint of a house, but you're looking at it through the backside of the page. So when I say I see I'm walking into the front door, and if you turn to the right, there's this. Well, it's on the left, but it's what I described, but it's on the wrong side. So I don't know how it works. I don't know why I'm able to do it. Um, and I get asked, well, how does it work? I don't know. Roll me in honey and throw me to the lesbians. I got no answer for that one. It just does or doesn't.
Yeah.
But, I've been able to help people in different states. One of the funniest ones. So my son-in-law is Navy, and they got transferred to Groton, Connecticut. And my daughter calls me up. My daughter knows what I can do. My daughter has a little bit of the gift herself. But she calls me up and she goes, "So, Dad, one of Jonathan's boat mates is renting a house and he's got some issues going on." And I just started laughing. And she's like, "Okay, what the hell's so funny?" That's all right. Who got bitch slapped? And from the background, I hear, "What the fuck did he just say?" And I'm like, "Oh, is that who got it?" Um, I said, "Who got bitch slapped?" Because I hear an older man in the background yelling, "If he talks shit about my house one more time, I'll slap him again." And this voice in the background comes up going, "Holy shit, how does he know that?" Well, it turns out it's the boatmate that has rented the house. He had a roommate that had moved out the day before because he was walking through the living room, stubbed his toe because they had furniture moved where they were bringing materials through. And he's yelling, "God, I hate this effing house," and just going off about the house. And out of nowhere, he just gets
Facts.
packed his shit and moved out.
That's funny. Get smacked by a ghost.
Yeah. Yeah. Right in the living room. He was like, "I'm done, man. I'm done."
Yeah.
But he kept asking me, "Where's my doors? Where's my effing doors?" Because he had most of the doors off because he's repainting them. So like there were like 2 bathroom doors and 2 bedroom doors that were off. Um, and then
But
I
where's they at?
described,
Like the whole door is missing?
like he took the hinges off the door
Oh,
and moved the door so he could go strip it down and paint it. But I keep hearing this older man yell, "Where's my effing doors? Why are there no doors?"
oh.
So, but this, the boatmate was just absolutely beside himself. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah, he popped in after
And
the show.
I thought it was funny as hell because as soon as I asked who got bitch slapped, they realized this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
So it was kind of fun.
there was no making that up. He just pulled that out of thin air.
Right.
Well, before we wrap, I want to ask what the acronym CROP stands for. Is that a paranormal group that you're involved in, or?
So probably 10 years ago, I guess, I started a team called Commonwealth Researchers of the Paranormal. Um, the slogan that I put at the bottom of our postings and everything is dedicated to finding answers and helping others. Now, if that's a family that's having issues in their home, or if it's a location that's having issues, a business or whatever. And as far as the helping others, hey, Rhonda, our team focuses mainly on doing public events as fundraisers for other locations. Like we've got one coming up June 1st, Henricus Historical Park, which is the second successful settlement in the New World. We're selling tickets for that, and all of the money goes to the park. It's a historic living museum. Dates all the way back to 1611. And through the years, we've raised about $15,000 for that park. We also work closely. September 21, we've got an event coming up at Pamplin Historical Park, which is 424 acres of battlefield just south of Richmond in Dinwiddie. And we've handed them close to $12,000 or $15,000 in donations over the years from hosting events to investigate the location. But that's what our team was kind of founded on. And Ryan came along as co-founder with me. Started out, yeah, this will be great, and realized Dennis is freaking insane. And we're going to do all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah, you're going to have your hand in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, 10 different pots there.
And the other thing, I took Ryan to a abandoned cemetery here in Richmond that he didn't even know existed. It's a turn of the century black cemetery, and it had been abandoned for nearly 30 years when we walked through the property. So we're walking through brush and briars, trees growing up, lifting headstones into the air. We started noticing so many military headstones in there, and I'm like, bro, we got to do something. And Ryan came up with the idea, let's start putting flags on all the military headstones. So that grew from Ryan and I going out there on Memorial Day and Veterans Day to now we do an event at the cabin twice a year. We fundraise to buy the flags. We place over 400 flags at Evergreen Cemetery, East End Cemetery. We do Woodland Cemetery now, which has about 250 headstones that we place flags at. So twice a year, we're putting over 700 headstones out, or flags out at military headstones. And it's all done to return to the community. That's
and the military. I mean, who deserves it more than them?
But it's to, as the slogan says, dedicated to finding answers and helping others. So I've dragged Ryan through a lot of crazy shit. He stood by me, so man, hats off and kudos to you, brother.
And I'm sure people can donate on your page somewhere.
No, we don't have a donation set up.
We would, so people can help out with the headstones and adopt. Have you done or thought about adopt a headstone? I had done that once down south. There was a cemetery that was doing that where you could adopt the headstone, like the plot.
I hadn't thought about it. We like when we do the events twice a year to buy the flags, which the flags now run about $2 a piece, and we're doing over 700, so it's about $1,400 a lick. But we'll let you buy tickets to the event even if you're not coming, and that money goes to buy the flags also. So It's just been. Now we do have, like, my brother from another mother, John Wells. He owns a antiques and collectible store here in town called Oddballs Antiques and Collectibles, and he donates some money every year. This past rotation, I had a donation from. I'm a master mason, and one of the Masonic lodges donated money to help buy the flags. And I actually had a handful of Masons come out to help us place flags. This year was our, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, this year was our 7th year doing this. Hey, Tracy. So Tracy is my sister from another mister. But this year was the first time that we actually had soldiers come out and join us. And I can't even lie when I say I had a lump in my throat and tears coming down my face when I look down the trail and I see this big white bus pull up, and there's 38 soldiers walking up the trail. And they all came up, stood in formation, stood at attention, were called at ease, and they were there to help. They were there to help place flags. And that was the first time in the 7th year, 7 years that we've done this, that we had that kind of support. And to be able to tell the history of a soldier that fought in the Spanish-American War at the turn of the century, that was a black man, rank of captain, one of 7 in the entire United States Army to achieve that rank, to a bunch of AIT soldiers that are just out of boot camp. And to watch their faces when they realize how far we as a race, as a people, as a country, whatever, have come. That was moving. I mean, to watch the young black men's faces that are now in uniform, and hearing about a soldier from 1901 that was one of 7 in the entire U.S. Army that was a captain. You know, to watch tears develop in their eyes because they realized they have a magnificent opportunity that this man didn't have. That was cool as shit.
Yeah, that is. Well, Dennis, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk to us about the cabin at 360, some of your remote viewing experiences. I'm sure there's more to talk about. And also, you touched on being a Mason, so I bet you know a lot about the Illuminati and some of that.
I know nothing.
Nothing, really? You liar! I see that smile.
Me? Does this look?
I want to bring you back to talk about that. That's going to be our next topic.
So, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know a whole lot about the Illuminati. It's not.
Okay.
And people are always going, "Oh, you're a Mason, so you're a member of a secret society." No, I'm a member of a society that has secrets. I've got decals on my truck that say I'm a Mason. I wear a ring 24/7 that says I'm a Mason. If it were a secret, I wouldn't have those. But we are a society that has secrets.
It's a good way of putting it. Well, we are definitely having you on, whether we're discussing Illuminati or something different. We got plenty.
But I will be happy to come back.
It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys, for joining us in chat. And then, of course, we're going to be on first Tuesday in May, which is actually my birthday, May 7th.
Oh, well, happy birthday early.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be 18 again. All right. We're going to go out, and I'll talk to you later, Dennis. I appreciate it. Bye, guys.
Yes, ma'am. Have a blessed week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining.